Hey guys, so we have our palette roundup for this week, October 17th, and we only used 5 palettes this week, so I'm just going to go ahead and start it off with number 5. This is the only palette this week that I didn't enjoy, and this is the Ciate London Cranberry palette. This is what it looks like. The palette, it's too soft. There's not a lot of pigment. As you can see, like, I really had to dig into these shimmers to get them to go onto the eyes. The mattes, like, it was fine. I feel like this would be a really nice beginner-friendly palette, but for me, I have these tones in other formulas that are just more pigmented that I prefer. Like, this isn't up to par with what I'm wanting out of a palette, and since it is so new and I've only used it once, I could absolutely give this to someone that's going to benefit them more than me having this in my palette. So it's not a bad palette. It's really not. It's just not what I'm looking for in a palette, and I have this color story 10 times over. So I'm actually decluttering this palette. That said, going forward, the next 4 palettes, I enjoyed all of them. They had to be put in an order, and this is the order that I'm landing with. So in spot number 4, we have the Luna Magic Uno palette. This palette got spot 4 because the mattes are just okay. The mattes that I used were this pink and this purple, and like, they performed fine. But just fine. When I tried to blend this purple out with the pink, the purple completely disappeared, and that's my biggest pet peeves with mattes, is when I'm trying to blend them out with a lighter shade and they disappear. The shimmers were great. I used this purple shimmer and then the duochrome, and then I used a little bit of this on my inner corner. This duochrome is absolutely stunning. This purple, there was great pigment, and this was super brightening. So the shimmers are great, and I've only used 2 of the mattes. So like, I can't give you my full thoughts on the palette so far, because I do need to use this in one more look. But so far, mattes are but the shimmers are great. So that ranked number 4. For number 3, we have the Profusion Matcha Milk Tea palette. And for me, the reason this is ranking number 3 is this green-yellow matte, it's really hard pressed, and it's really hard to get any pigment up. And then I just feel like we did not need this bone-colored shade. Because this, like, we could have had another shimmer, in my opinion, or another, because, like, this is a shimmer. This dark green. So we could have had a darker green matte in here instead of this bone-colored shade. I just don't see what this is adding to the palette. Had we omitted this shade, this palette might have ranked higher, because this duochrome, these palettes, I need the other 2. So that's why that's ranking at number 3. For number 2, just above it, we have the Terra Milk Tea palette. And this is ranking above it because just the mattes are better. It blended better. But it's ranking below the number 1 palette simply because this shimmer is almost not needed, because this duochrome is so beautiful and it almost looks like the same tone and color. So if I'm going to use this palette going forward, I'm probably never going to reach for this shade. I am always going to reach for this more super shock feeling duochrome. But overall, these mattes perform beautifully. Like, this palette is way more cohesive, and I enjoyed this one more. And then for palette number 1, which is what I have on my eyes right now, this is the Cara Beauty, we always have to peep the packaging, Summer Daze palette. And I used these 2 rows, minus the glitter today, because I'm going to use that when I do my second look with this palette. And just like I said about the Flower Powers palette, this is beautifully buildable, highly pigmented. It's a gorgeous color story. Look at that yellow. This is the shade Trippy on my inner corner, and it's a duochrome. And like, I didn't want to put a glitter on my eyes. That's how pretty I think this looks. And when does that happen? I'm very excited to get a second look out of this palette. And that is my roundup for this week. And I will see you guys in the next one.